let's go ahead and open up our Bibles to 1 Corinthians 13. You might already be there. And we will spend our last week examining these individual phrases with one another. The past 2 weeks we've spent so far, and this will be the third week that we'll spend on 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7. We're going to cover these last few phrases together. So I'll let you get there for a moment. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Also, again, for those of you who came in a little bit late, we have a bulletin now. I don't know if you saw that when you came in, so wonderful, great. So grab that, and that will help you know where we're going in the sermon. Okay, 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7. By this point, you know what it says. Hopefully, you have a better understanding of what it means, because that's really the only thing of great importance. But I'm going to read it anyways to kind of set the stage for where we're going today. 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7. It says this: love is patient. Love is kind, which we'll talk about that one today. And it is not jealous. Love does not brag. It is not arrogant. Does not act unbecomingly. It does not seek its own. It is not provoked. It does not take into account a wrong suffered. It does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices in truth. It bears all things, it believes all things, it hopes all things, and endures all things. That is a powerful love, church. And I know that as we've spent the past, this is actually the fourth Sunday, so we've been a month on this already. This past month, I know from talking to many of you that this has been a profound thing in your life. That understanding this has made a profound difference. And really realizing what the basis of our entire walk with Christ needs to be built upon. Love has also been very eye-opening to you. Has been to me as well. So I really hope that all of you have been enjoying this sermon series, but more than just enjoying it, I hope all of you are ingesting it. And if you remember, the very first thing I said on the very first sermon that we preached on love was, it's not good enough, church. It is not good enough to simply know what this says. It's not good enough. We must understand it, and we must practice what God is teaching us about love. How many of you have spent time just meditating on love and your version of love and your practice of love over the past few weeks and realized that it's pretty short of where it should be? I know I have. Actually, Steph and I have been talking a lot about this lately. The more we seem to discuss this and try to do this, the more Satan seems to be attacking. Get us off our game, so to speak. So I want you to be ready for that as well. Stephanie and I have been discussing this and how we can love each other better, how we can love our children better, how we can love you better. And Satan doesn't want us to. He doesn't want us to, because the last thing Satan wants us to do is to be unified as a church, to be unified as a people. Because when people of God are unified, God's work gets done. Satan doesn't want that. So be ready for that. I would say probably now more than ever, pray for this church. Pray for you yourselves individually, that God would continue to teach us and also build a hedge of protection around us as we put these things into practice. As I said before, this love, this agape love that hopefully you're getting a fuller understanding of, is really a vital, perhaps the most vital component of our Christian walk. Of course, beyond the foundation of Christ. Remember, this sermon series is building upon the foundation of Christ. That's the name of it. And we're building upon that foundation with love. Very first and foremost. And that is the most vital component that we all can have in our lives. And what happens, church, when we don't practice love this way? I think all of us have seen the results of that, right? In our own lives, in our churches, in our families, in our marriages. There's a lot of brokenness. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of hurt. And ultimately, and most importantly, as 1 Corinthians 13 tells us, everything we do that is not founded in love, not grounded in love, will be useless. It will produce nothing. It's like planting a tree that never produces fruit. If we do not have this type of love in our life, it's like planting a tree that never produces the fruit that it was intended to produce. So love, church, in this sermon series is not about just the knowledge. And I know I've said that, and I know you know that. But I want to drive that point so deep into your heart. It's not about just the knowledge. It is practical application. And with that in mind, there's three very important things I want to remind us of this morning. there are things that I'm sure you all know. It's something I want to remind us of. First, it's this. We can never pick and choose which scriptures we want to follow. We can't do that. And it's easy to do with 1 Corinthians 13, right? When it says love does not keep a record of wrongs, it's easy to say, well, I still want to keep a record of wrongs, and so I'm going to keep that one. We can't approach Scripture like that. When it says love is not provoked, and you find yourself being provoked in anger, and that brings some type of satisfaction to your flesh, well, we can't do that. I know it's easy to want to pick and choose, but we cannot pick and choose based on the level of difficulty, what we obey in Scripture. That's number one. And I know we know that, but we have to be reminded of that. Second, we are called to live a certain type of life, right? Christianity is not a game. And far too often we play it like it's a game, like it's just an accessory to our life. It's something we've added to our life that might help us through difficult times, or we might call upon the name of the Lord when we're kind of down and out, or go to church when we feel like it, those kind of things. It's not Christianity. Christianity is who we are, defines us. Christianity is living a certain type of way. So living a life of love, agape love, is just an expression of true Christianity. Without it, remember from our, I think it was the first sermon in this series, without this expression of love in our lives, we're fooling ourselves. John calls us a liar in 1 John. We're not a Christian without this type of love. So it's not just simply about not picking and choosing. It's also about this Christian life is a certain thing, and you don't get to define it, and I don't get to define it. Which brings us into my third point. The Christian life, we look at doctrine often, and doctrine is important. But just knowing doctrine is never enough. Living doctrine is what we are called to do. Not basing Christianity on how we want to live it, but living it according to the power of God's Word and the instruction found within. I want to just pull up a slide here. It says kind of what I said in a more succinct form. It says this: how we live our lives, how we live, is directly related to our understanding of and our knowledge of true Christian doctrine. Let that sink in for a minute. How we live our lives is directly related to our understanding of and our knowledge of true Christian doctrine. So you can't have one without the other. We talk about doctrine, it's important, but it's not ultimately important. The way we live is ultimately important. But we can't live the way we're supposed to live or called to live unless we know the doctrine. And that's why we're spending so much time on love. Because, church, I think we need a lot of teaching. I know I do on the doctrine of agape. The doctrine of agape. Doctrine is not an old, archaic word that is just a word that we don't like to use because it sounds old. Doctrine is literally what this Bible teaches us. The truths of God's Word is doctrine. But living out the doctrine is what is important. And so I've been thinking this week, next week we're going to be finishing this short sermon series on love. We're going to be moving back out to Matthew and finishing that sermon series by the beginning of April. But how do we keep this fresh on our minds? If we are kind of starting anew as a people, as a church, and love is going to be the basis of what we build everything on moving forward, how do we keep this fresh in our minds, right? It's so easy for things to kind of become out of sight, out of mind. How do we keep this love, this passion that we have for learning and practicing love at the forefront of our mind? I've been thinking a lot about that and how I can assist you in that. But ultimately, the first thing is, this has to be important to you. You have to decide that this is of such great importance, that you will spend your days, your weeks, your months, this year in focusing on love and how you can better love your spouse, God first and foremost, but your spouse, your children, your fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, and those who are unbelievers outside of the church. You have to internalize this. But I can preach to you till I'm blue in the face. But until you realize just how important this is and put into practice in your life, I will be like me speaking to a wall, trying to move a wall with my voice. But also, I'm going to try to help. So I'm going to write a weekly devotional for the remainder of this year that will help us focus on love and some aspect of love. And so hopefully that will help. And that will be posted on our website and on Facebook and probably emailed to you as well. Keep that at the forefront of your minds. But maybe something you need to do, and I don't know what works well for you, but maybe each of you needs to have a scripture verse of love that you put on your bathroom mirror each week, and you change that out each week or each day or something. Something, church. We cannot forget this when we move on. We cannot let this fall to the background. This is so important. Remember, a lot of you, when we first started getting really into evangelism, the Lord really lit our hearts on fire for evangelism, and we lived and breathed it, and we went out together, and we still do those things, and we're getting back to that again. We need to have that type of fire for love. We need to have that type of fire for love. For where we live, and we breathe, and we eat, and we drink, and we sleep it. Actually, last night, it's funny, I had a dream about it. I had a dream about agape love. I'll tell you about it after church if you want. But when it's something that's on your mind, and I know it's easier for me because I'm writing these sermons and I'm doing a lot of study, but when it's something's on your mind, you usually, you dream about those things, and you think about those things because you're musing on them. It's deep in your consciousness. So I want us to remind us all that you have to internalize this. I will remind you, I will help. It's part of my commitment to you as a servant leader in God's church. But each of you need to understand just how important it is and make a decision that you will make love a priority in your life this year. Agape love, the love we're defining, that love. So I know this was kind of a long intro into the sermon, but these were things I didn't want to let go unsaid. But it actually leads us to what we're going to discuss this morning, because we're going to look at the next few phrases in our text, and we're going to define these things. If the Christian life is living out the doctrine of Scripture, well, then we must know the doctrine, and that's what we're going to do this morning. So up to this point, we've looked at how agape is steadfast, and we've kind of looked at all those phrases that fall into that steadfast category. Love is patient, and so on and so forth. We've looked at how love is self-sacrificing. It does not boast. It is not arrogant. This morning, we're going to look at how love is faithful, or love is full of faith. Love is full of faith. And what I mean by that is that if we love the way God has called us to, we will remain faithful to God. We will remain full of faith in our walk with Christ, and we will remain faithful to the people of God. Meaning, basically, that agape love, as we practice it, as we give love, this type of love, it will enrich our walk with Christ, and it will enrich our relationships with each other. Faithfulness will be what defines us as a people. Faithfulness to God and faithfulness to each other. If we put these things into practice. So very quickly, let's look at this slide. I'm going to show you everything we're going to cover this morning, just to kind of give you an idea of where we're going. Agape is faithful. It's kind. Agape is kind. It does not act unbecomingly. It does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices in truth. It believes all things, and it hopes all things. These are phrases that really fall into that category of faithfulness to God and faithfulness to each other. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and look at this first one. Love is kind. Love is kind. What do you think about when you hear that, kind? What does it mean to be kind? How many people do you know that you would classify as kind? Would you classify every Christian you know as kind, or every person you know as kind? Maybe you think that so-and-so is nice, but you wouldn't say they're kind. How do we classify this? And really, this love is kind, in light of all the other great, profound things we've learned about love so far, this one might seem like maybe less profound than the others. Maybe, kindness. Sure, we value kindness in this society. We do. We all know people that we would say are kind. And at first glance, this whole topic of kindness might seem a little bland, but I assure you it's not. I assure you it's not. It's actually, I believe, a kindness of spirit is vitally important for us to build every other aspect of love upon. So look at kindness as kind of a springboard for everything else we've discussed up to this point. Kindness is, like I said, is a foundation. It literally means this. It means to have a gentle, benevolent spirit. To be mild. Okay? not weak. Don't get confused. Kindness is not a weakness. Kindness shows favor when none is deserved. That's not an easy thing to do. It's a hard thing to do, to show favor when none is deserved. Kindness is powerful. So kindness shows favor when none is deserved, which really is the heart of God, isn't it, right? We've talked about agape and how it springs from the heart of God, and it's demonstrated to us and then commanded for us to listen to follow. Agape is the heart of God. Kindness, showing favor when none is deserved, right? So kindness is not a weakness because God is not weak. He's the most powerful being in the universe, and yet he is also kind. He showed us favor through the cross of Jesus Christ when none was deserved. And that's our basis for what our kindness ought to be founded upon. Matthew Henry said it probably better than I ever could. And he said this about kindness. Matthew Henry said, "It is benign, bountiful. It is courteous and obliging. The law of kindness is in her lips." That's a reference from Proverbs 31, if you want to write that down. The law of kindness is in her lips. Her heart is large, and her hand is always open. She is ready to show favors and do good. Listen to this. She seeks to be useful and not only seizes on opportunities of doing good, so not only seizes on the opportunities that are presented in doing good, but she searches for them. This is the heart of kindness, church. This is her general character. She is patient under injuries and apt and inclined to do all the good offices in her power. That is a beautiful definition of kindness. I know it's a lot to take in. I could probably read that and maybe expound on it a little more and send you home, and it would be enough to think about for 1 week. If you want to find this quote, you can look this up in Matthew Henry's commentary. If you have it, I think it's the greatest commentary ever written. If you don't have it, you can look it up. I think you can find it free online in various places. Or just look up 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7. Find this. You'll find this if you want to look at this later. But church, listen to this. To be kind is to be giving, is to be loving, is to be gentle, trusting. It's to be faithful to God and to one another. A person who gives more than they take. That's the heart of kindness. A person that remains faithful in times of trial and calamity. That is kindness. Kindness not only shows favor when none is deserved, which we've already discussed, but kindness acts mildly when others show scorn. Well, where's that in Proverbs? This just came to my mind, but a kind word turns away a harsh rebuke, right? A kind word turns away a harsh rebuke. Kindness is powerful, church, and if we were to practice kindness the way we are commanded to, it would have a lasting impact on our lives and our relationships. Kindness seeks the good of others over the good of self. And kindness is a gentleness of spirit, an outward expression of gentleness in the midst of even very great spiritual and relational storms. Really, part of its definition is meekness. Meekness. How many of you remember a few years ago, it's been about 2 years ago now, where we went through the Beatitudes and we came to blessed are the meek. Remember that word, preutus, or the root preus? Remember that word? We talked about preutus. I'm going to give you, for those of you who either weren't part of the church at that time or don't remember, this word preutus for meekness is a very profound word. I'm going to give you just a snippet of its definition. This is what preutus is. A balance born in the strength of character, stemming from confident trust in God, not stemming from weakness of faith or fear of any sort. So this word preutus, or its root word, preos, this is part of its definition. It's that middle ground. It's confident trust in the Lord, not exposing yourself or allowing yourself to wild variance in one way or the other, being wildly depressed or wildly overjoyed. It's a middle ground. It's a confident trust in God. That's the definition of meekness. And kindness is similar. Kindness reacts to each other in a similar way. We're not susceptible to wild swings of emotion towards one another. Kindness is an act of love that keeps us focused and steady. Kindness is born out of great faith in God and brings a balance of strength to our love, to our confidence, and our mildness of life as a Christian. But kindness goes one step further than praius, right? Kindness is not just an inward strength of God, as that word praius means. Kindness is an outward expression of our love. It takes a very, very, very strong love to practice kindness by this definition. Gentleness, meekness, giving more than you take, loving under difficult circumstances, showing benevolence and charity, treating each other with an open hand and not a raised fist. It takes a great strength of love in order to do that for each other, doesn't it? How many of you would consider yourself kind by these standards? How many of us? How many people do you know that you would describe as kind by these standards? If we're only coming up with a couple names, church, there's a problem. We need to fix that. We need to fix that. With the help of God, we will. With the help of God, we will. I wish we could say that I describe every Christian that I know as kind under this definition. This probably in the most real way hits home within our homes, doesn't it? Are you kind to your spouse in this way? Are you kind to your children in this way? To your parents in this way? Children that are here this morning, are you kind to mom and dad? I don't care how old you are. Am I kind to my mom and my dad? Not always. No, that's a problem. That's a problem. But I want to say this. Can we be a church who's committed to being kind to one another? Not a weakness, not a meekness as far as we don't stand up for truth. We're going to get that in a minute. But can we be a church that practices kindness? Can I look at you as more important than myself? Can I treat you with an open hand? Can I treat you with gentleness, benevolence, and charity, and really love you the way God has called? That's our first challenge. Love is kind. Let's move on from that. Love does not act unbecomingly. Love does not act unbecomingly. Now, whenever I hear this word unbecomingly, it always reminds me of Ephesians chapter 4, right after that. I call you now to walk in a manner worthy of the calling in which you have been called. That's what Ephesians 4. Actually, let's read it. I have it here. If you want a roadmap and true understanding of what Paul is writing here in 1 Corinthians about love does not act unbecomingly, all you have to do is read Ephesians. Actually, read the whole book. It will tell you exactly what Paul means by not walking unbecomingly. Okay? So that's what I love about, obviously, God's word. Paul writes to the Corinthians here, and he just uses that one word, unbecomingly. But he writes an entire book about how to walk becomingly to the Ephesians. And let's read Ephesians chapter 4:1 quickly together. Therefore, I, the prisoner of the Lord, implore you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling in which you have been called. You see, we are called by God in order to walk the way He's called us to. Not to walk the way we want to, but to walk the way He's told us to. To be set apart, to live a life that is different than who we were before we were in Christ, or different than the life that the world lives, or that the world celebrates. To walk the straight path set before us by God. That's what we've been called to. And to walk becomingly, that's what that means. To walk the path the way God has told us to. Walking becomingly, then, is an outward act of faithfulness to God. An outward act of faithfulness to God, and, which is the important part, which is why it's listed here, and to the people of God. To walk becomingly reflects not only good on God, but it reflects good on the people of God. When we live in agape, we will live this life in a manner that seeks to uphold God's glory and honor and give credibility to the church. Think about that for one moment. I'm going to give us examples. When you act the way you should as a Christian, you are not only showing God how much you love him, but you also are showing how much you love God's people and his church. When a man or woman acts in the way that is unbecoming, which is the opposite of what becoming is, of course, when a man or woman walks in an unbecoming way, the world mocks that person, but not just that person. They mock the church. When a professing Christian falls and spirals into sin and lives in sin openly, the church is mocked. God is mocked, not just that person. Poor behavior then and poor walking in a manner that is not worthy of the call then, is a direct assault on God and God's people. Now this is kind of just silly, but I've been having to force myself to get on Facebook just so I can post sermons and stuff for church and keep up. And this just seems to be a good way to communicate with the truths that God wants us to as a church. But think about different things that you may share or like on Facebook. Are they appropriate? Are they becoming of a Christian, the things that you are liking and sharing and saying and posting on Facebook? It obviously extends far greater than this, and I'll get into examples in a moment. But to act becomingly means that we obey the truth of God's word in full, and that we love God's people the way God tells us to. The way that you love at this moment in time is either becoming of a Christian or it is unbecoming of a Christian. There's no gray area. How many of you have seen the recent news in the Episcopalian Church, many Methodist churches, Lutheran churches, Presbyterian churches, and now even the entire Church of Sweden? I don't know if you read that article this week. That is now celebrating and ordaining transgender pastors and bishops, gay and lesbian pastors and bishops and elders and so on. How many of you have seen that news or seen reports of that? Methodists are doing that now, Episcopalians, Lutherans, Presbyterians, and the entire Church of Sweden. Actually, the entire Church of Sweden just celebrated the name change of a transgender woman pastor. Brothers and sisters, not only are these churches, these people, unfortunately, apostate and complete heretics and wolves, the problem is they're calling upon the name of God while they blaspheme it. They're flaunting and living openly in their wickedness and their sin and making a mockery of God's church. An absolute mockery of God's church. Why? Well, because first of all, they're not saved. They're unsaved. They need the gospel. They need truth. They need God to open their eyes. But they are walking unbecomingly. Now, this is a very, very severe example, I understand. But they're walking unbecomingly. They look nothing like they should. And that's really the heart of walking becomingly. Their shame is now seen by the entire world, and get this, church, the world does not know the difference. They call upon the same Jesus, the same name at least, it's a different Jesus they believe in, but they call upon the same name that you and I call on, and the world doesn't know the difference. They are walking in a way that is unbecoming of a Christian. They are blasphemers. They are insolent, and they are fools. This is a major problem, brothers and sisters, a major problem. We'll get to more on this later as we discuss truth. But church, everything you do is being watched too. Not just the stuff in the news. Remember, like I just said, Facebook is one way people will watch you. Watch what you like, and then you share and you post on Facebook. See, love acts the way it should. Love acts the way it ought to. It abstains from sin and wickedness, but in the context of the church, or our text, the only way to walk becomingly or properly is to live the way God has called us to. Anything less than that is not love, and it is not our calling. Let's look at Ephesians chapter 1, verse 4 to kind of help us process this. Ephesians 1:4. Just as he chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we would be holy and blameless before him in agape. In in agape. We were called for the purpose of being holy and blameless and to love a very specific way, to be set apart. And you, as a Christian, have no right to live any other way than the way in which you've been called. It is God who called you. It is God who sets the rules for you. And we are to surrender our lives to Him. We are called, church, to be set apart, to be different, to look different, to be countercultural, to have the world say, what is wrong with those people? They do things so differently. But we need to love like this, church. We need to love like this too, differently. And we need to love differently than we currently do. Let's move on to the next slide here. It says, moving on in Ephesians chapter 1, it says, He predestined us to adoption as sons through Jesus Christ Himself, according to the kind intention of His will. I love that phrase, and it means such a profound thing. I preached on this, so you can go back and listen to this if you'd like. To the praise of the glory of His grace, which He freely bestowed on us in the beloved, which is Jesus. We have been called into the family of God, church. Called into the family of God. We are now children of the Most High through adoption by God's goodwill and grace alone. And now we are children of God and representatives of Him. That is why we must walk becomingly. That is why we must. We are fellow citizens of the saints that has come before us in heaven. In the household of God, we are Christ's ambassadors, His representatives on earth, and one day we will share in this future glory that the saints who've gone before us are already sharing in. That is so unbelievable and profound. I can barely wrap my mind around the incredible profoundness of this verse. And yet, we're here right now. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. We're here. And so I am to live in a way that reflects that I understand this truth, that I am predestined with the other saints who have gone before me to share in the household of God and to be His representative on earth. I'm to live in a way that reflects that I understand that. And you are as well. And the world will be put on notice by how we live, by how we love. We are not to walk in shame like those blasphemers and heretics in those churches I just mentioned. We're to walk in honor, upholding God, upholding God's people. I was thinking about this week as I went back and looked at some of my notes from previous sermons. The pride and the honor of a family, the pride and the honor in the family is often reflected to the children. Right? The legacy of that family to continue what is taught is lived out in the lives of your children. Mom and dad, train your children in the way they should go. And when they're old, they will not depart from it. As they grow, the world will be able to see what it is you've taught them. So the honor is in the children. And any lack of discipline in the children, any rebellious nature in the children, it reflects poorly upon the parents. Brothers and sisters, that is the relationship we have with God. God, our Father, when we act in a way we should, it reflects poorly on God. Now, God is not training us improperly, and God is not to be represented poorly. But the world looks at us and says, well, the God they serve must be weak. He must not be very powerful. He must be some kind of being that has no real hold or control over the lives of the people that claim Him. The honor in the family is in how the children walk and act. Brothers and sisters, you and I are children of God. We are joint heirs in the household of God. In church, we represent our Father. Are you representing Him well? That's what walking becomingly means. You hear a lot about people being groomed for things. Sometimes people are groomed for like a certain job. You have somebody in mind, you want to hire them, and so you groom them to do a specific task. Or court appearances. A lot of times in court, especially a defendant, the lawyer will spend a lot of time grooming the defendant to take a stand so that they present themselves in a certain way and look a certain way. They're being trained in how to act. so that they are presented and made light of in a certain way. And quite rightly so. These are good things. Brothers and sisters, you and I are being groomed to act in a certain way. In our instruction manual, our grooming booklet is this: are we walking becomingly according to God's word? Because there's coming a day when you and I will be presented to Christ, okay? You and I are being groomed for the purpose of being presented to Christ one day. Let's look at Jude 1:24 quickly. Now to him who is able to keep you from stumbling, it's part of our walk, right? To walk in a manner, we don't want to stumble, keep you from stumbling, and to present you before his glorious presence without fault and with great joy, to him be the glory. This is what we're going on to. This is what's coming, church. We will be presented to Christ. We are members of his body, the church, the family. We are joint heirs with Christ. We are his representatives on earth. Does your life reflect the will of a rebellious child who wishes not to love the way we've been called to, but wishes to love the way you want to? Do you dishonor your father, and do you bring shame to his church by the way that you live? Those are good questions to ask ourselves. Very good questions to ask ourselves. Let's go on. The next one is this: love does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices in truth. Of course, God is a God of righteousness. He loves righteousness, truth, justice, and equity. Those are character traits. Those are who he is. It is the very character of God: righteousness, justice, equity. And as children of God, called by him, and representatives of him that we just discussed, we are also called to love these things too. To stand up for them, to live for them. An agape is built upon the foundations of truth and righteousness. But first, what is righteousness? We use the word righteousness in a lot of ways. A lot of times we use righteousness to mean a right standing with God. And that's true, but there are many meanings to righteousness. And we're actually discussing a different meaning to righteousness this morning. What God is telling us here, in accordance with agape, is that agape does not take delight in wickedness of any form, but it finds its delight in truth. Equity and justice bring joy to our lives. And we wish to be ambassadors of equity, of justice, of righteousness. Let's look at Psalm 145:17 quickly. The Lord is righteous in all his ways and kind. I love that word because it just plays so well into what we're discussing this morning. And kind in all his deeds. But what does that mean for us? God is that way, but what does that mean for us? 1 Corinthians is telling us very plainly and giving us the roadmap to how to love each other. What does loving righteousness and truth have to do with that? Well, I'm glad you asked, because there's a lot to do with it. A lot to do with it. Love does not rejoice in wickedness of any kind. Now, this is very far-reaching. What music are you listening to? What music are you listening to? If it is not bringing honor to God, it is unrighteousness. Do you love music that is not pleasing to God? You are a lover of unrighteousness. You see, in this culture, we just take everything for granted. We just do things because it's what we do. If you are a lover of music that is not righteous, then you are a lover of unrighteousness. What movies are you watching? What do you allow yourself to see? What TV shows do you watch? If they are unrighteous and they glorify wickedness and sin, then you are a lover of unrighteousness. The exact opposite of what you're called to. What books are you reading? Are the things taught in that book or talked about in that book, are they righteousness or are they unrighteousness? What do you do in your life that does not represent the truth and righteousness? Brothers and sisters, if you haven't figured it out by now yet, we live in a society that celebrates wickedness, glorifies unrighteousness, flaunts openly their sin. Do you participate in that in any way? Do you see how far-reaching this becomes? And if we rejoice in unrighteousness and not in the truth, then we are not living in agape the way God has called us to. We are not loving God and loving God's people the way He's called us to. Blessed are those who hunger. Everything can always go back to the Beatitudes. Do you realize that in the New Testament when you read it? Jesus already spoke in the very first sermon He ever preached. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst. Do you hunger and thirst? Is there a thirst, a welling up in your soul for righteousness? When something comes on the TV and they blaspheme the name of God, does a thirst for righteousness well up in your soul? And you can't even listen to it. You have to turn it off. You have to flee from it. Or you just look past it. Oh, they only blasphemed God's name 4 times in that movie. It's not a big deal. Do you hunger and thirst for righteousness? Think about that. What are you participating in that might not be righteousness? Here's a hot topic. Many of you, probably every one of you have been dealt, this topic has come up, and I just want to give this for an example. How many of you go to or participate in weddings when the relationship was mired and founded upon and acted upon and lived in sin? It's normal in today's society for couples to wallow in fornication, cohabitation, have illegitimate children, or marry an unequally yoked partner, and then you get the invitation to go celebrate their relationship. Now, sometimes those people will repent and, of course, move out and do those sorts of things, and that's okay to celebrate. I mean, obviously, when somebody's repentant, that's different. But I'm talking about those people that you've been invited to their wedding where you know it has been a relationship forged in sin, right up to the day they were going to get married. And then you go, and you participate in unrighteousness. Probably many of us have done that. And we act like God is pleased because we read 1 Corinthians 13 at the wedding ceremony. And why do we do it? Why do we go to that wedding often? Because we don't want to offend the person that invited us. We would rather offend God instead. Something to think about. I've known people who have not participated in weddings because of that reason. And I take my hat off to them. It's a hard thing to do. That's just one example, church. I'm just trying to throw out a broad example. Music, movies, the relationships we celebrate, Facebook, I don't know. There's 100,000 things probably. What in your life do you celebrate that is unrighteous? Because we often celebrate wickedness without giving it a second thought. It's just what we do. Agape stands for the truth and represents the truth always. Always. Because God stands for the truth and represents the truth always. It flees from wickedness and embraces truth, equity, justice. Love does not shrink away when the truth needs to be spoken either. It's part of what agape is. Agape is always an outward expression, not just an internalized understanding. Love stands up for the honor of God and for God's people. How many of you have ever been in a situation where a lie or a half-truth or a misrepresentation or a gossip of a brother or sister has been spoken and you stood silent while it was happening? While one brother or sister is being torn down and misrepresented, you stand silently, not wanting to get involved. Church, agape loves the truth so much that unrighteousness in any form is like a cheese grater to the soul. It hungers and thirsts for righteousness. And anything that is less than righteous should be an offense to God's people, because it is an offense to God. But more so even than all these things, love does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices in the truth. Even more so than all these things, and all these things are important, there is one ultimate truth that agape rejoices in. You can't talk about truth without talking about the gospel, right? It's impossible. It is the ultimate truth. Agape rejoices in the truth of the gospel and is never afraid to speak it. Gospel proclamation, I believe, is the ultimate outward expression of love. to the unbelieving world, and even within the body of Christ. It is the ultimate act of love because it is the ultimate declaration of truth. Do you not share the gospel? Do you not share the gospel? Are you ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ? Now you might say, well, I'm not ashamed. Do you share the gospel? Does it give you so many tremors of fear that you won't do it? Then you're ashamed. If you do not share the gospel, then I would say your love is greatly lacking at best. But I would argue, and I would be right, not because I'm right, because God's word is right. I would argue, if I had more time, that you don't have love at all. That's how important truth is, church. That is how important truth is in love. Truth in love is always spoken. And the ultimate truth is the gospel. Let's move on. Love believes all things. Love believes all things. Now, right off the bat, I need to tell you what this does not mean. What this does not mean. It does not believe that love foolishly believes in anything and everything somebody tells us. That's not what is being discussed here, right? It's not as if we walk around as naive, foolish people that just carelessly accept anything that's spoken to us. That's not what Paul's writing here. That's not what the Holy Spirit is teaching to us. Believes all things doesn't mean that we throw away all prudence, right? Doesn't mean that we throw away all logic or all reason. So what does it mean then? What does love believes all things mean in accordance to agape? Very simply means this, and it'll be up on the screen. To trust and believe the best of our fellow brothers and sisters. To give the benefit of the doubt, not rushing to judgment and conclusions, and not seeking to aid in bringing dishonor to their name. Love believes all things. To trust and believe the best of our fellow brothers and sisters. To give the benefit of the doubt, not rushing to judgment and conclusions, and not seeking to aid in bringing dishonor to their name. I think I put that quote in your bulletin, so you didn't have to write it down because it's important. To love in this way says that we understand that sanctification is a work of God, and that we are all a work in progress. And in spite of other shortcomings, we trust that God will work out things in our lives for good. I trust that even though you might fall into sin, I trust that God and believe that God will do his work in you, because you are a fellow brothers or sister in Christ. The word in the Greek here actually means that we both believe and trust God to do his work in every believer. And that every believer, every professing Christian, will be used for God's glory and God's purposes. Agape believes the best about each other. And this verse sums up, I think, faithfulness in a very profound way. We keep our faith and believe that God will work things out in his time for the glory of his kingdom. As I look out at all of us and through many people I've known in my life, we all see people at different stages of our walk with Christ, right? Some are more mature than others. Some are at different places in their sanctification. We're all at different places in our sanctification. But agape does not hold some with contempt because they might be less mature in their faith. Agape doesn't hold others in contempt because they might not be as sanctified or as holy as I think I am. That's not the heart of agape. Love believes that God will complete his work in you. Agape, if we're loving each other, and we understand that all of us are a work in progress, agape then, instead of holding the other person with contempt and seek to tear them down, will seek to support them, encourage them, walk alongside as God gets that person to where he wants to take them. Because we have a deep trust in God and a deep belief that God will work out all things for good for us and fellow brothers and sisters. And even when we find our fellow Christians have fallen into small and great sins alike, we will continue to walk with them and believe the best for them and of them. That is what this means. Do you believe all things? Do you believe that God will do his work in me? Do I believe that God will do his work in you, and am I committed to helping in any way I can to see that through? That is what Paul is writing. That is what the Holy Spirit is teaching us. That is agape expressed. Agape is faithful to God and faithful to each other. Love believes all things because we have a great trust and belief in God. Last thing, love hopes all things. Love hopes all things. This is such a beautiful phrase to end on, and to end our study of these specific phrases. I want to actually read the full definition of the Greek here. Just look at this. Love hopes. Let's look at this word. Elpizo is how you pronounce that. You can look it up in G1679 if you want to later, because there is actually various usages here and extended definitions, but this is the best, most fitting definition for us this morning. Elpizo, hopes, means this: to hope in a religious sense, to wait for salvation with joy and full confidence. Love hopes all things. To wait for salvation with joy and full confidence. Finally, brothers and sisters, our love is founded, grounded upon a hope of our salvation. And, which I'm going to get to in a minute, the hope of your salvation. The very first thing that love hopes all things means is that we have hope that God will uphold our salvation. He'll never let it slip. He'll never let it slide. He'll never let go. I know I have a place that I'm going home to in glory, and God is the one who upholds it. That is what we're talking about here. We are convinced that God's love is so great, He will never let us slip through His hands. He protects our salvation with great care. But next, the way we hope in love, how we express it, is that we have a hope of salvation for those unbelievers that we know in our lives. We continue to pray for them. We continue to hope their salvation and pray for their salvation and speak the truth of the gospel for the purpose of their salvation. How many of you have friends, family members, maybe children or parents, family members in your lives that are unsaved? Love hopes for their salvation. It never loses hope. It prays for them. It lifts up. And it speaks the truth of the gospel. That's part of it. And having the confidence that God will accomplish that which He set out to in that person's life. But finally this, love hopes all things in the lives of the wayward of the church, or those who have walked away, or those relationships that have been broken in your life. Love hopes the best for those people. It prays for those people. It uplifts those people in hopes that God will restore those people. So it's not just about the hope of our own salvation or the hope of the salvation of the unsaved, but it's about hoping and wishing for the blessing of God even on those who have either offended you, walked away, or are no longer a part of your life. Love hopes all things. Love hopes the good for all people in your life. Remember, church, it is not good enough if you only hope for blessings for the people that hope for blessings for you. It's not what we're called to. We're to pray for and lift up even those who have greatly offended you. And hope and pray the best for them. That God would teach them and use them for His glory and His purpose. That's ultimately what love does. It does not give up, even when others may have given up on you. So in light of everything we've discussed over these past few weeks, and I know there's a lot to take in, and I don't pretend to think we're going to just get this like a flip and a switch, but in light of all these things, in light of God's definition of love, how far do we have to go, church? Now, as a corporate church, I can make that assumption or that generalization, but how far do you have to go? Because really, the church is made up of a bunch of individuals that come together to make one greater body. So first, I want you to focus on you. How far do you have to go before these things from 1 Corinthians 13 can be spoken true of you? But corporately, as a church, how far do we have to go to love this way? Because, church, we must love this way. We must figure it out. We must work this out in our own lives. We must pray and lean upon the the power of the Holy Spirit to guide and direct us. This is not going to happen overnight. This is work, and that's why I said, how committed are you to loving? Because after next week, I'm not going to be preaching on love for a while. It's going to be other things. How committed are you to love this way? We must all be committed to love this way. How desperately do we want this? How desperately do we want this to be true of us? And really, what I want to leave us with, the last sentence, is this. Are you committed enough to God and committed enough to God's people to work at it? Let's pray.